fantastic. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are very excited to have this webinar series. I think it's very timely, and we are also very fortunate to have our guest speaker today, Professor Curt Bonk. First and foremost, before I introduce him, this is a TEIS webinar series, and TEIS, as you know, is the teacher education intersection in TESOL, and we're interested in all processes involving teacher education and innovation in pushing teacher education of ESL, EFL teachers all around the globe. My name is Faridah Pawan. I'm here at Indiana University. I'm originally from Malaysia. And so with Curt, so this is Professor Curt Bonk, and if you've seen visited his websites, you will see he has had many awards. I was just kidding, because I see an award for him every year, sometimes two. Amongst them are the Online Learning Journal Outstanding Research Achievement, the Fellowship Award in recognition of outstanding leadership and service to the profession of the Association for the Advancement of Computing in Education, and so on and so forth. And so without further ado, Curt, if you could do a quick intro, and then we'll get on to discussing the state of e-learning. Curt?
Okay, great. So I'm a former this and that. I'm a former accountant and CPA. I'm a former educational psychologist turned instructional technologist, and I'll be former that someday too. I keep getting kicked out of places and finding new homes. In fact, where I am right now, right here, I'm in a hotel lobby, since they can't get me a hotel room at the conference we're at yet, so I'm kicked out of that hotel across the street to this hotel over here, so I keep getting kicked out of things. So hopefully I'm going to find my home or my housing someday soon. Online learning is one of those places. Blended learning is another. I have a handbook of blended learning. Some of you may know me from my book, The World is Open, How Web Technology is Revolutionizing Education. But if not, send me a note, and I'll happy to send you a couple free chapters. Whatever you hear about during this session that you would like to learn more of, I'm happy to send you. We're not going to do a formal presentation here, although if you go to my homepage, you can get all my presentations that I'm doing here. I'm doing 9 here this week in Kansas City at the AECT conference. I did 2 last week in Las Vegas at the eLearn conference. Go to curtbonk.com or CURTBONK, or go to trainingshare.com. That has all my archive talks. Go to trainingshare, one word.com, archive talks, publication share for my publications, publicationshare.com. So I try and make things available free and open. And if you want a free book, if you go to my homepage, you can download a book with 100 ways to teach online called the Tech Variety book, or you can just go in TEC Variety and download the book right now in English or Chinese, soon in Arabic. They're working on the Arabic version right now. So if nothing else, you can get something free from this. Like I said, that has 10 different principles of motivation that spell Tech Variety. And you can get a free 10 ideas or activities for each of those 10 principles: tone, encouragement, curiosity, variety, autonomy, relevance, interactivity, engagement, tension, and yielding products. There are 10 ideas for each of those 10 activities. 10 times 10 is 100. And so if you want a free book with 100 now, at least I'll get some good reviews from people who want something free. I'll stop there, Faridah.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess we're all excited with the title that we have today, and which is the state of e-learning, the state of online teaching today. And I think the title of today's talk, which is the state of e-learning, and my question to you is the state of online learning and teaching. I think they're converging together. So what is the state of e-learning and e-teaching?
And so anyone in the audience there from New Zealand, in 2002, in fact, there's an article I sent to Faridah to maybe send to all of you, what is the state of e-learning, or there's 30 ways that learning is changing in effect. In 2002, I was in Hamilton, New Zealand, outside of Auckland, and I was at a conference about e-learning, and they said, Mr. Bean, not the real Mr. Bean from television, but a guy who looked like Mr. Bean, gets me off the plane after being on the South Island and come to the North Island. He said, can you come to the studio tomorrow morning to be on television? And I said, sure. He said, how about 6 o'clock in the morning? So I show up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's there but me. And the vice chancellor comes about 15 minutes later, and the two of us are staying there waiting. About a half hour later, they're putting makeup on us for the Channel 1 New Zealand. The whole country of New Zealand is going to watch us on TV. And they gave me 3 questions. They gave me lots of makeup, and I waited at 7 o'clock, 7:15, nothing, 7:30, nothing, 7:45, nothing. All of a sudden, he goes, after break, we're going to go to Hamilton, New Zealand, and hear from our experts out there about e-learning. We got Dr. Curt Bonk from Indiana University, blah, blah, blah. I come back from break, and he says, okay, Dr. Bonk, what is the state of e-learning? That was not one of the 3 questions they gave me. And so I went, on national television. I've never been on national TV before, nor have I worn purple like this. And I literally looked like a stupid idiot. And they went to the vice chancellor, who answered the questions totally fine. He had worked for Margaret Thatcher in the UK, and he was, had crisp answers. And I looked like a fool. But they come back and they asked me a question on the list. I was fine. I go back to my hotel room. A guy gets in my taxi as I'm getting out, and he goes, "You're just on national TV." He laughs. He goes, "Ha ha 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 ha." So I go in, I do my talk, dressed up as Mickey Mouse, doing the 10 mini-myths of e-learning. After that, Mr. Bean says, "Can you be on national radio?" Sure enough, the first question on national radio is, "What's the state of e-learning?" By that time, I had an answer. It depends. The conference ends, and they have us all line up, all the keynotes in the conference. They go, "We're going to have the keynotes tell us what the state of e-learning is." This is 2002. By that time, again, I had an answer, but what happened in New Zealand, they had Lord of the Rings became popular, and they wanted to be known for something else. E-learning was picked as that something else, so they wanted to know what the state of e-learning was. And so, I've been thinking about what the state of e-learning is because I've had these experiences along the way. We move along stages. First stage is going to be awareness of what's going on. Then comes resistance, because people don't want to change. Then comes understanding of what's possible, stage 3. Mm-hmm. Then becomes doing something with that. And then comes advocacy and sharing, or sharing and then advocacy. We're finally in the doing stage of online, and actually some people are in the advocacy and the sharing of what they're doing. MOOCs are back here, resistance, and every new technology goes through these phases. Online learning today has become almost ho-hum. My mother, God rest her soul, if she was alive today, she'd read about online learning on the front page. My brothers and sisters read about what we do in our fields related to blended learning, online learning. It's in magazines, newspapers, the radio, it's all over. And so every university pretty much is dabbling, at least, if not putting full programs on. High schools, middle schools, you name it, government settings, the military. I mean, I've done a lot of work with the US military for online learning, and it's beyond that early stage of resistance that we saw in the early 2000s when I got asked that question. Here in 2018, people are ramped up. I was traveling the world training people to teach online for many years. In the past year, not so much, because today people can get free access to my book to learn how to teach online, get expert webinars like this, or get best practice information. So in one way, we're at the stage where it's recognized and it's accepted. Not only is it recognized and accepted, but today online learning is the growth area of most universities. Many programs like my own would not exist without online learning. We have a master's degree in instructional systems technology, as does the language education program at Indiana, LCLE program. We have certificates, we have a EDD, a doctorate, as does where Dr. Pawan is. So today, it's not only recognition, it's actually embracement, because if you don't jump into online learning in some way, shape, or form, even in a small way, you will not be able to keep the clientele, the audience, the stakeholders that you currently have, at least not keep them happy. You won't be attracting new members. So in many ways, we see presidents embracing the possibilities, but we need to see them embracing the possibilities from a quality standpoint and an engagement standpoint, not just from a monetary standpoint. And unfortunately, too much of online learning is led by a for monetary reasons. I can say that as a former accountant, but I think that online learning offers us to be more creative. It offers us to be more passionate in what we're doing and to extend our courses to the world community in ways we never could before. It's an exciting time, but we have to think about all the different perspectives of why it's an exciting time. And again, for many people, it's just to make sure they can pay the bills. And that's okay, but that's not enough for me. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think because this intersection is focused on teacher education, especially language teacher education. So I think what we're interested in is how has it changed teaching? How, and how has it changed learning? The two go together. And so you've had some interesting ways. So tell us about the megatrends.
Well, there's a lot of trends that continue to come at us in waves. We have the online and open textbook movement here in the States, anyhow, making, like my book, free and open to the world to use, the world community, and to translate into other languages. That's a huge trend. Blended learning has been a trend for 2 decades now. And again, I have a handbook on blended that, it seems to go in waves in terms of what does blended mean. Does it mean combining technologies? Does it mean combining populations of people around the world? Does it mean combining pedagogy and technology? What does it mean combining face-to-face and online? It's really meaning combining face-to-face and online. The learning is more open, more blended. It's more massive with these gigantic open online courses. It's more visual, like right here. You can see me, okay, and so forth. It's much more visual than ever before. And we'll walk into buildings in the near future where you're going to be able to pick your instructors and pick your peers for the day off the cameras that are in the room. Their peers will come from the Philippines, or they'll come from Jamaica, or they'll come from somewhere else in the world. So it's much more visual. We're moving from an age of Wikipedia to an age of Videopedia. We're storing massive amounts of video online, and that's good and bad, because we have to think about how to use that video to anchor learning, to situate learning in a context. So I think the online learning today offers us opportunities for contextually based, rich learning opportunities, for global collaboration with peers around the world and experts. So we can bring in experts like here into GoToMeeting or into whatever technology, synchronous tools you're using. That's a game changer in many ways. That's an eye opener. That's a way to interest your students in the history of the field, into the legends and legacies out there that have established the field, and get them excited to become a major in accounting or in some social work or occupational therapy or whatever it is. So synchronous learning is a big trend, I'd say, like what we're doing right now. I would say that blended learning continues to be a huge trend, but video on top, because we can see things and hear things. We can store things, dual coding theory. Alan Pavio's work from London, Ontario, a long time ago, says we encode things both text-based and video-based. We'll be able to recall it better, retrieve it more. We'll have those retrieval cues that we wouldn't have just from memorizing the facts that we had in the past. So those are a couple of trends. There's much more. Mobile learning, of course, we're getting things on smaller and smaller devices, but eventually be able to bend out the screens to have larger screen displays in front of us. Learning is also more modifiable. You go into any classroom setting today, you can move the chairs, any new classroom, you can write on the walls and move the chairs. So online learning is impacting face-to-face learning, which is another huge kind of insightful thing that's going on here, is that students are not going to be settling for what they had in the past in terms of the learning environments. Learning environments are changing, whether it's online, blended, or face-to-face, or video conferencing based. I can keep going, Faridah, but maybe I'll pause for a second.
I was going to say, when you write words such as adventure. Learning is more adventuresome. Learning is more extreme. I mean, and I think those are some of the words that kind of raise questions. I think some of what you mean is in what you're describing. However, I am most interested in something because it impacts our teaching most clearly, in the sense informal learning and formal learning, the blurring of the two lines. I mean, I think as you've mentioned prior to this and before, that 80% of learning is informal. That's even more the case now, don't you think? What are your thoughts on that?
So my friend Jay Cross, another person who passed away recently, 2 years ago, in fact, while I was at this particular conference, he coined the word informal. He coined the word e-learning, and he in his book on informal learning, he talked about 80% of learning being informal in nature. That has gone up over time, over the past couple of years since, 10 years since that book came out. We're seeing, as I said, these informal avenues, not just Wikipedia, not just TED Talks, not just YouTube, but the assembly of resources at our fingertips to look up data, to look up the primary data articles, the resources. The open access journal articles today have expanded to thousands around the world of journals have made their contents available so that you can offer courses fully with free content, free articles. And that's another game changer out there. As you said, adventure learning, having people in the rainforests of Peru or in the Arctic North interacting with kids in schools about their expeditions and their scientific experiments at the North Pole or in the Baffin Islands or Greenland or whatever, to excite young people into STEM, some aspects of science and technology. That's something that didn't exist before. Or in submarines, I mean, the kids are in the Jason project moving submarines under the ocean. So, you know, these it's not just informal. I would call it, I think a better word might actually be non-traditional forms of learning, which will include formal as well as informal, but breaking outside those traditional classroom walls. And that's, to me, an area that I'm interested in because I'm a product of television courses. I took correspondence courses and TV courses to get into graduate school. And then I got hired by the person grading my papers to develop a TV course for critical thinking for teachers at the University of Wisconsin that was nationally syndicated. So I got to experience it as a student. I got to help build one, and now I do research on it. So I think non-traditional learning, which includes online learning, blended learning, includes adventure learning, includes informal learning with YouTube and Wikipedia and all these other, you know, Twitter and whatnot. But informal has become more accepted. It's become more the norm for many reasons. One, availability. Two, the cost of textbooks have gotten out of hand, and students aren't buying the textbooks today that they need to pass the courses. So increasingly, instructors are utilizing OpenStax textbooks, which are free, OpenStax, for high school students and first and second year college students out of Rice University. Those are free books for most introductory classes. So increasingly, they're finding ways to utilize the free and open contents that are wrapped around us, and those are only going to increase. What we need to do is find quality measures. Some people are getting certificates in a place called Quality Matters.
Right. We'll get to that because I want to ask you about evaluation. However, because this is something, as I mentioned, the teacher education intersection, we're interested in how it impacts our teaching because, as you're saying, most of the time it's not happening learning is not in a structured fashion. The boundaries, the walls have been broken in terms of learning, but that impacts our teaching. So in a sense, you know, I think you saw from my own work, one of the things that I challenge is I don't want technology driving pedagogy. I want pedagogy driving teaching. So how does all this impact pedagogy in your opinion?
Back up for just 1 second. That Faridah and I are at Indiana University. We're in a building built in 1992, which is a demonstration site for technology and education. So for most people around the world, you should not be thinking about technology first. You should be thinking about pedagogy first. We at Indiana have a license where we've got federal monies to experiment with technology. If we weren't experimenting with technology, we wouldn't be spending the taxpayer money well. So our mission, part of our mission, is to utilize the cutting edge technologies. So if you come visit us, we'll show you around. That said, that was 1992 when the building was opened up, and I came with the building. I arrived when they were taking the tape off the elevators. Now it's 27 years later, 26 years later, and things have radically changed. And the tools for engagement are vastly different than what they were back then. However, collaborative technologies, such tools like Aspects and Conference Writer and Collaborative Writer existed in the early 90s. Today with Google Documents and Pirate Pad and Meeting Words and things like that to have students interact around content, that's the most important thing. We have to think about what's the goal or the mission of the use of the technology. It's okay to experiment with one or two technologies and see what's possible, but you shouldn't line up your curriculum, your objectives, and pay worship and homage to the technologies. Some people do to get grant money, okay, fine, but the pedagogy and the objectives should be driving the lesson, and the goals, and not only your goals, but the goals of the students walking into the program. You might not recognize all the possible goals as the instructor, and getting them to lay out what their expectations are, their commitments are, and their goals are, will open your eyes up to the possibilities. And then thinking about, well, what technologies have you used in previous classes, and get them to tell you, and then think about what you might.
Question a different way. Let me ask the question a different way, because pedagogy is something that is top of our priority in this intersection. I think when you wrote that book, well, you've had several editions of the Tech Variety book. You had activities in there that, for motivating learners, for engaging them online, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess one way for me to ask this pedagogy question is, what are your criteria for selecting those activities in the book? Because that reflects your pedagogical orientation as an online researcher and teacher.
Yeah, so 20 years ago, I wrote a paper called Pedagogical Activities on the Smart Web. I taught the second undergraduate course in the School of Education online that had ever been taught. Dr. Jack Cummings taught the first one the year before. He said, you can do that course now. And I said, no, I can't. You had 7 students last semester. It's now got 20. And you said you almost died with 7. And I almost died with 20. But then the next semester I had 30, and it was easy. The first time teaching online is hard. You could have 1 student, 2 students, 3 students. So I wrote this paper called Pedagogical Activities on the Smart Web. We designed tools before Blackboard existed, before Canvas, before WebCT. We designed our own portfolio tools and e-portfolio tools as students work. We designed profile tools, web link rating tools, ways to get students to interact with one another, discuss, share ideas and content. So things you're trying to think about is building intersubjectivity among your participants, so they get to know each other early on through social icebreakers. You want to get students to know little bits about themselves so that they have some mutual knowledge, even if those social icebreakers don't discuss a lot of the content in week 1. That's okay, because it will have a lot of payoff in weeks 3, 4, 5, and 6. The students will be less likely to drop your course if they've laid out their commitments, if they lay out their expectations, if they lay out what they're planning to do in the class. They don't want to lose face and drop out. So I had 30% drops my first semester online. It went down to 0 by using social icebreakers. So among the pedagogical things you can do include creating a safe tone or climate, so students feel some sense of freedom, some sense of psychological safety, a safe harbor to discuss with each other their perspectives, their beliefs. But later on in the semester, you might try and build in tools to get them to interact in more heated fashion. So I build in tools for debate and role play. I have 28 roles that students are playing on right now this week. I took the slacker role. I have 27 other roles, but there are roles like questioner, summarizer, optimist, pessimist, devil's advocate. I have a series of roles that they take on, wise person, guru, and so forth. If you want to have that list and use it yourself, I can give you that web link to the list of my 28 roles, and you might be able to take those and repurpose them somehow for your own situation. But that's one thing that I do pedagogically. I don't do it in the beginning of the semester because I don't want them to be getting upset with their peers. Right? I want them to have a little more social friendly kind of tone setting the first couple of weeks. So we're now in week 9 and 10. That's normally when I try and do this kind of thing. This kind of stuff. I also did last week. I had students write cases on the web in our discussion forums based on their personal experience or their current situation that linked to the concepts from the book. Since the 1990s, I've been doing case-based learning online. We had pre-service teachers in the field experiences writing problems in the Indiana schools down, and students from Finland and the UK and Peru and parts of the US were solving each other's cases online. So instead of saying, here's a cool technology, we're using a tool called COW, Conferencing on the Web. Faridah might remember that. We're using Canvas this past week to have students write a little intro blurb problem, and then each other are solving those cases that is a problem that a student sees in their situation. To me, that gets students to think critically. It also, if they justify their reasoning with citations, they're then backing up their claims and doing good critical thinking. They're doing creative thinking by designing a case. They're doing critical thinking by evaluating the case. I also do a lot of project-based learning in my classes, and students might do a project in YouTube where they summarize their learning with the YouTube video, or they write a book chapter. We have a wiki book, a book that's a wiki based, kind of from the same Wikipedia people out there. The people who built Wikipedia, actually, the guy who designed it dropped out of Indiana University to build Wikipedia. Little tidbit of knowledge, but his name is Jimmy Wales, and Jimmy Wales built WikiBooks and WikiQuote and WikiSource. WikiSource is a fabulous website. If you've not seen WikiSource, it's like the original documents of John Dewey and Sir Francis Bacon and Mother Teresa. And WikiQuotes are quotes of Shakespeare or Hemingway or whomever. You don't have to worry about the inaccuracies of the content as you do with Wikipedia, because it's the original source documents.
Right. If I may interrupt, Curt, because you have tons. I think one of the things that's rich about your publications is that you have a huge amount of sources, a huge amount of ideas, and that's free to download anytime. I think that's one of your biggest contributions. I have two things to note. One is I'd like to invite people who are in the audience with us, there are 22 of us right now, to post your questions, to jump in anytime to ask questions of Curt. And so do so through the chat page, or just voice out your questions. The other, I think, one of the things that you've mentioned as we wait for questions to come, Curt, is that I think one of the things that you're showing is that the magic is still in the teacher here, in a sense that, the teacher plays a role. It's not technology. It's kind of thinking about, what's going to happen, what's worth learning, what's worth knowing. I mean, that's the essence of pedagogy, actually. And so the teacher still plays a role here, and not vis-a-vis technology. And so, in that light, what is the training for pedagogical training that you see, a pedagogical education and teacher education for people who are wanting to teach online? Or what are the avenues for professional development for us online teachers whereby we can continue our growth? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the trends? What are the needs?
If you download my free book, go to chapter 14. It's on helping support resistant or reluctant instructors. It has 10 tips in there, and I'll go through some of them here. What some institutions are doing is systemic change. It can't be a one-off training like this here. It's got to be a multitude of things that wrap together around, and among them might be just the people in the trenches showcasing what they're doing in a technology fair day of some kind, or a pedagogy fair day, or online learning fair. We have them at Indiana, where the Memorial Union is opened up when people put their posters up of what's happening. You create this not only acceptance, but celebration of what's happening. So you have to celebrate how people have experimented. There's this scholarship on teaching and learning, or SOTL, that's very alive and well here at Indiana, that sponsors many people to come in to talk about communities of inquiry or some other trend out there and how you might adopt that. So it's got to be a combination of things where there's some recognition, there's some best practices. At Indiana, we're creating Professorpedia. We're creating a website called Great Conversations. So you can go there and listen to people, and you just interviewed me for that, but many others. So you can hear from some of the people who have done, but you also can try things out and display your work in a poster. You can get some mentoring. We've had mentoring programs in Indiana where someone with more experience, we don't have to be an older person, or it could be a junior person, is mentoring someone who wants to start out, and as a result of mentoring, they might get a monetary reward or an iPad or a laptop. If you get training at Indiana, we had a laptop program. If you had so many hours of training, you got a laptop. So it's got to be systemic in terms of pedagogy. There's got to be some of these kinds of things we're doing now. We used to have Thursday morning brown bag lunches. We used to have video conferences to all 8 campuses where anyone could go online in a video and talk about what they're doing at any of our campuses.
I think what the question is, for instance, one of the things, and this is something Garrison and company has done, which is, working with teachers in terms of their making the distinction between teaching presence and teacher presence, social presence, cognitive presence. All those presences are part of, I think, to be included in the professional development of online teachers, right? And this is what I was trying to get at. What are some of those areas that you see require, constant nurturing for us to sustain our expertise as online professionals?
We just studied a class looking at social presence and just submitted it for a journal article. So she's talking about social presence, cognitive presence, teaching presence kinds of things. How do you build that into your class? Well, among those is the tone that you provide.
It's like
when I respond to people, the first response in a discussion forum, I try and use as many names as I can of the people who have responded previously. I try and include everybody and try and create a positive tone before pointing out what they maybe didn't get correct. You point out what they got correct, what caught your attention, what was creative about what they had to say. Then you might manage the situation a little bit and point out some things they didn't get quite correctly. So you transition a little bit, but it's finding your spots. When I was in Sweden a couple decades ago, people told me, Dr. Bonk, you're there, but you're never there. I said, what do you mean? Well, we analyzed the discussion forum. People thought you were in all the time, but you had only 2 or 3% of the posts. You strategically posted. You have to find the hot topics. You have to be the first one to post and the last one to post, or among the first. You can't be find the hot topics and get in there quickly, and also be the one at the end that summarizes and recaps a bit, and a little bit along the way. But you don't have to be in all the time. The sun never sets on an online class. You have to find those places and spaces where there's some controversy brewing, and everyone's going to visit it. This is you get in there too, and people feel you a little bit. You nudge them a little bit through reminders. I had a TA once. I said, Emily, can you send the reminders every week? They'll hate me if I do that. Sure enough, they loved her at the end of the semester. They hated me because she sent the reminders. They're busy people. They had full-time, these were teachers, in-service teachers throughout Indiana, rural Indiana. So little gentle nudges once a week, summaries of what happened once a week in a general note somewhere in the announcements in the forum, or can be in an email form, somewhere where you make yourself known to them, and somewhere you show you're responsive to their needs. If you're getting the same question, you can create a response that has that response is repeated. Why not just create a general announcement that addresses all people's needs? So you can even be a team member of a group. That's another way to build social presence. You might join a team, at least temporarily, or rotate it among the team members is another way to do it. You might create critical friends or email pals, so you can't be the only one providing that presence, but you can have someone giving feedback to a peer in the class, and that way they're getting feedback from somebody. The presence can come from multiple ways, that social presence, and that's important, right?
Yeah, it is. And I see 2 points here that I think I see one question and one comment. One is, what are the main challenges of delivering academic English programming via online platforms? Do you see it, Curt? Do you see the questions too?
I don't see the questions, so that's good that you're reading them.
Okay, so the first question is, what are the main challenges with delivering academic English programming? I'm not sure whether it's a programming question or whether it's a content question. If it's a content question, my assumption is that, in a sense, role modeling or whatever it is the target. I'm not quite sure, Matt, if you could elaborate a little bit more whether you're asking about programming or whether you're asking about the content that you're trying to deliver.
Well, one of the biggest challenges there, of course, is going to be the varying levels of skills of incoming students and how to address that, because some are coming in with, not much, skills, and also then you're talking about cultural sensitivity as well, and the types of content that you bring in, even the jokes that you might tell. You have to be sensitive to the clothes that you wear. We've done a study of cultural sensitivity in online classes, in massive online classes. We're trying to get published right now, in fact, and we interviewed a couple dozen experts in the field to get at that, as well as other things that we did. And it's vast, the number of things that metaphors and analogies that you use. Be careful about anything political or religious, and I'm just talking about that the cultural sensitivity side of things, but also in terms of scaffolding the learning. One important thing you have to think about is, how heavy do you want the scaffolding to be? How much task structuring do you want to provide? Do you provide step-by-step with a tutorial? Do you provide step-by-step with an audio where you walk them through it and you record it in Jing or some other tool that then they have a video recording of you showing what the tools are or what the activities will be. You probably have to side on the heavy scaffolding side and provide more in an English academic program. You probably have to provide more supports than normal programs. You probably have to provide more resources and make them available in as simple a format as you can. I'm not sure if you got an elaboration yet on that question. Or
yeah, I think Matt's focus was more on content. I think you were addressing some of that. Probably the multimodal, the a la universal learning types of approach, which is, how many ways are you representing the information? How many avenues are you creating for interaction and for showcasing talents, their own talents? So I think that's probably amongst the challenges, because one of the things is that it requires so much of the instructor. And as you know, if we teach online anything, the front loading of the prep is so huge that it turns off a lot of instructors. It's not the amount of work; it's also the anticipation of what's coming up. That's really interesting. Your comment on that?
I ran 3 sessions last spring on universal design for learning. I'm happy to, if you write me an email, I'll send you the handouts from that. But Susie Gronseth, Gronseth, is editing a book around the world, what's going on in terms of universal design for learning. It will come out with Routledge in about a year. And again, I'm happy to connect anyone to her, and she can give you kind of a tip sheet of how to address UDL within your classes. That is one thing I agree with you, Faridah, on in terms of that topic.
One thing you agree on.
Multimedia, multimedia.
Share it.
Yeah.
Gronseth.
Gronseth. She's at the University of Houston.
Okay.
Susie's her first name. And she's got a second author, a co-author, but I'm blanking on the co-author's editor's name of that. They're halfway through, and they're going to be, I know because I have a contract. I'm working with Routledge as well, and I help them get that one. But I have all Susie's handouts if you're interested in UDL, as well as what our IU administrators say about universal design for learning, because we ran 3 sessions on that last spring, and I was in charge of that, as you know. So I'm happy to share those.
Right.
So what's the other question that's come through?
There's another question that has come through, which is, somebody was mentioning about Walden University doing a master's, and I think at Walden University, and social presence was in the discussion group. And I think we have something to say about that too, because in terms of social presence, structuring discussion groups is quite a feat. Curt, do you want to say something about that?
So Walden University used to use Indiana University for the residency. Indiana almost bought, 20 years ago, Indiana almost bought Walden University. That's the rumor I heard. I'm not sure if that's, yeah. There's something going on that's in Minneapolis. There's something going on with Capella there and Walden there. There's a lot of innovation happening in the technology field.
And Purdue and Kaplan, don't forget.
And Kaplan as well is up there?
Purdue and
Purdue got Kaplan. Yeah, Purdue got Kaplan. There's a lot of innovation happening here in Indiana. Indiana's recognized for online learning, most wired, most unwired. In terms of setting up your groupings for social presence, it's something teaching online is a creative endeavor, but it's also a more complex endeavor. It's gonna, and there's a lot of front-end planning, as Faridah pointed out. You have to really think ahead of what you're doing. So what I did in 1997 or 96, I wrote a paper for Bajrul Khan's book about web-based instruction that had 10 ideas for creative thinking online, 10 critical thinking, and 10 cooperative learning before I ever taught online. Then I used those ideas for laying out my course. So what I'm recommending to all of you, write an action plan, write a white paper, even if you don't publish it. Think ahead before you ever teach. Well, you probably are already teaching online, but before you teach another class online, write down some things you might think about doing and work from that rather than reacting. Be proactive. And if you want to think about social presence, include that, in that white paper. That it could be a mini white, it could be very short, how you want to build social presence in the class. And it could be through peer-based forms of learning, could be through even self-feedback is a form of feedback, but peer feedback, instructor feedback, expert feedback. There's a lot of ways to build the presence of the human presence in a class. Mm-hmm. And I always am bringing in experts from around the world. I'm always connecting people to resources and other people with their emails and their bios and other things. I'm trying to get them a sense of, it's not just an article you're reading, there's a real human being around here. And we can bring that person in and hear how their ideas have changed since they wrote that article, and that one idea doesn't represent a person. And a big part about teaching online is social cognition, empathy. And in this world of chaos, this world of confusion right now, we need more than ever to have educators think about perspective taking and social cognition. And with the tools today for global collaboration and teamwork, where you can work on different aspects of an assignment together using Google Documents or a wiki space, a wiki tool of some kind. Wikispaces doesn't exist anymore. TV Works or some other tools. These are exciting times for that social cognition to unfold. It already happens in kindergarten, or young kids with Kids as Global Scientists, ePals, iEarn. There are a number of these things out there for the K-12 space. Higher ed has not done, and I'm assuming most people here are higher ed people, I might be wrong, higher ed has not done as well in this notion of global education as it could. And I think if there's something I want to get people to try and think about, pedagogically speaking, that links real well today with technology, it's trying to build social cognitive related activities, global education activities, and redesigning your curriculum from a global or international perspective.
Sure. I have two questions here that are, I think, that are really interesting. One is on empathy. The other one is on evaluating students' work online. So I think, so we'll take both questions at this point in time, and they're very good questions. In terms of empathy, I think I started teaching online on 9/11, 2001, and there was a complete shutdown for when that happened. And with my name and all, that was just, that was just sort of an interesting. I thought it was disaster because reaching out to people who's not there with you at a critical moment like this, like that was as an online professor, it was. It was beyond me. But one of the things, just to kind of give you a quick example, because I want your feedback on this and others as well, is that one of the things that the only thing I could do was to share my own insecurities, to share what I was seeing, trying to connect with people, in terms of what's happening in my context, and in terms of theirs, because that's the only way that I knew to reach folks. Otherwise, it was just a two-dimensional existence at that point in time. I think about 1 week and a half after I was doing that, people started coming back because everybody was nervous about making their views of who they are known, because people don't know anymore what's right, what's wrong. At that point in time, everybody was scared. And so what are your thoughts about, the question was, what is this, how do you create this empathy? How do you talk about affective engagements, responsive engagements online. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Building empathy is something you have to accumulate over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens. It might even happen over the 15 weeks of a class, of a normal class. It's something that you want to build into your program along the way. What can you do to build in empathy?
So one is examples. Yeah, go ahead.
So among the things that I try and do is, again, I have people who are paired up with someone who's going to be providing you support, reminders, feedbacks that you need, and I call that a critical friend. Some people call it a web buddy, some people call it an email pal. So you build in small teams and then you build in larger teams later on. You move from short things that work with pairs, and then you may have quads, or 3, 4, 5 people in a group that build a product at the end of your course term, or a product that's on display that everyone has done their piece of. They've collaborated in their using their expertise, and then put it on display in the learning management system or in some kind of gallery of their work, and you start to maybe even present it online in a synchronous session like this, or discuss it or debate it. You might have people pull out case problems of their local situation. That's another way to build empathy, is to see someone else's, issues or dilemmas or problems, that challenges that you might have some ideas on how to solve them as a peer in that class. So case-based learning goes a long ways. Instead of instructor-based cases, have student-based cases or scenarios, or whatever you want to call them. How rich they are may depend on what the students, how elaborate you make these. It can be a very simple text-based couple paragraphs or one paragraph. Could be more elaborate with video wrapped around it. But my point is then, by building cases based on your own experiences and own situation, that's a tool or mechanism for opening up one's eyes to see, yeah, I'm sitting here in Bloomington, Indiana, it's a pretty nice place, but here's someone else who's in parts of the world that doesn't have that, in Nepal or someplace that might not have the same resources, especially after the earthquake in Kathmandu, and they're writing a case problem of how they're dealing with that hurricane that just hit southern Texas, or the Puerto Rico, or they're dealing with an ice storm, or they're dealing with a typhoon in Hong Kong a few weeks ago. You build in these real world, real life. I mean, Haiti didn't get an online university till they had an earthquake, and Mississippi and Louisiana banned online learning till they had Hurricane Katrina. Sure. So there's empathy possibilities through these personal stories of what's going on in my life. And if you can have that as part of your curriculum, as case-based writing cases as part of your assignments, and these rich pool of cases, then they discuss terms, you build in concepts that you're reading to solve those cases. So you're not only building empathy, you're learning the content along the way. So you're solving those case problems with the content from your discipline, maybe even stuff that's not in the books yet. Maybe it's such cutting edge stuff that you're reading about that hasn't even gotten your textbooks yet, that even pushes the class further. So that's one idea that I have. Another way, go ahead, Faridah.
I think one of the criticisms that folks will have is that, well, what you're saying is what we're doing face-to-face anyway. That in order to create empathy, it needs to be student-centered, student-generated cases, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you mentioned at the end there the fact that it's, that you can kind of connect with something that's happening right now in the class is a feature of online teaching that's unique. The other, I think, for example, is combining synchronous and asynchronous sort of deliveries of your of engagement. I think that's another part whereby online, where we are right now, makes possible, right? And so
Can I give an example of that?
Sorry?
1995, I brought in two people whose articles we read on the impact of computer programming on thinking. One guy's name is Elliot Soloway. You can look up this guy. He's still at University of Michigan today. He's a faculty in engineering, computer science, and education, all three. He's a really smart guy. I read about his work before graduate school. I was inspired by him. Then we brought him into my class. We read his article, Computer Programming Impacts Thinking. My students hated his ideas. They were asynchronous. They were debating. Someone else from the University of Houston named David Palumbo. They hated their ideas. Then we brought him in live into our class using synchronous, at the time CUC-Me. They agreed with everything they had to say, everything. So asynchronous first, then synchronous. It's a way to get perspectives out there. They see that one idea doesn't represent a person, and people's ideas change over time. I brought in David Merrill, who'll be at this conference. You'll meet him tomorrow at the conference here in Kansas City. Most famous instructional design professor in the world. My students hated his ideas. They're critiquing all this stuff. We brought him in live using Adobe Connect. They started going like this, everything he had to say, So that's one. So if you want,
the factic element is there when you see people, in different representations of people. I think, having said that, I have to address this point because it's been here. The question has been here for a while, which is online assessment, the exciting work of online assessment, and then with that, obviously, with the ideas of the ideas of plagiarism, the ideas of in Britain it would be invigilation, or for us here it'd be supervising, things like that. So what are some of the things that are floating out there?
You know, plagiarism, I
online
reduce plagiarism. You can't delete it, but I did 27 videos on how to teach online, and one of them I did on plagiarism. It's probably had the most downloads of all the videos. If you go to my homepage, you'll see these videos that I did. They're in YouTube. How to do blended learning, how to manage a class. I have all these. They're free. You can download them. They're translated to Arabic too for our friends in Saudi Arabia who are listening in here. So assessment. There are 4 things that people want to know when they're to teach online that they're hesitant about: quality, copyright, plagiarism, and assessment. Those are the 4 horsemen. That's you know, the dark horsemen or whatever you call them. But so
say again, I'll type it. Say again, I'll type it.
Yeah, quality. Everyone wants quality, but you know, the guy who wrote the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance tried to define quality. He went crazy trying to define quality. We're going to go crazy trying to define online learning quality. Quality, copyright. The rules change every day, and they're different by country. Plagiarism, and assessment. So one way I addressed plagiarism is I told the students to cheat. I told them they had to work with a partner on every exam. They had to sit next to a partner and discuss their answers with someone next to them. Because I believe in a social cultural point of view. I believe that you learn best from hearing other people's strategies and points of view. So their team members, they had to work with a partner. And then in effect, they're checking on each other by doing that. A second way to address plagiarism, you make the assignment so darn hard, no one in their right mind will want to do the assignment for them. You make it so different. You don't just assign 5-page essays anymore. You assign them to do a concept map or a timeline or a taxonomy, something more difficult that they have to put together, and really have to think about organizing that content and then reflecting on that taxonomy that they designed or that timeline of the field. So you have to create some interesting, that are content-based assignments that aren't actually easy. You can cheat on anything. I mean, students walk into face-to-face exams and they put the answers on their Coca-Cola and their bottles of water. They spend 4 hours with a laser printer. So don't lie that they don't cheat in face-to-face. They cheat in face-to-face. Student at the University of Michigan got a degree. They brought a mannequin. They got him a social security number. They brought him to face-to-face classes and got him a degree at the University of Michigan. People cheat face-to-face. They're going to cheat online. You got to reduce it. You can't eliminate it. One ways to eliminate plagiarism are to make the course engaging and active and make people personally responsible, having them share their products, but having the assignments be different, and don't repeat the same assignment over and over. Come up with something new. You can actually put the content into Google search and see whether or not it finds that same content. I mean, there's 30-some ways to check for plagiarism, to reduce plagiarism, address it. I'm just gave you 3 or 4. There's many things you can do. Assessment. Assessment's, I think, more important than plagiarism to address. It's more difficult, a sticky wicket. I've been moving towards rubrics for my assessments in my online classes, where I'm looking for certain criteria, quality criteria for a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or 4 or 5. So I've laid out the rubric of how they're going to be evaluated, and I'm looking for those traits within their papers or their products that they're producing, or their concept maps or their whatever. So in concept maps, I'm looking for connections, I'm looking for depth and breadth and macro propositions, and I have certain things that are in my rubric for analyzing concept maps. And you know, so that's one solution in terms of assessment, is to form rubrics and keep model or refining them over time. Assessment.
What do you think of digital badges? You know, people talking about digital badges and all these things. You know, Jen Hickey, for example. You know, I mean, that's in our reality at this point in time. I mean, that's with assessment.
Yeah, I have 2 students doing dissertations right now on digital badging. One at the college level, faculty actually, and one at the K-12 level. Badging is not widely accepted yet today. Will it be? It's a good question. Will badges be like Boy Scout and Girl Scout badges were when we were, you know, going to school? Will they be that accepted? I think there'll be some kind of micro credential or micro degrees that we'll be getting for skills that we learn that will represent on our resumes or our CVs. That's undoubtedly going to happen. Our resumes, our CVs, our Vitas will change. It has to. We're going to get recognized in 3 parts. We'll have our formal education, we'll have our more informal that's assessed or rated, or there's credentials, there's a certificate or a badge. At the bottom, there'll be our explorations some kind. We'll have three-part educational systems, three-part educational representations. The formal will still be at the top. Formal, but not university degrees, but more of a certificate or a badge or a credentials would be in the middle, and those might be more important than the formal stuff at the top. Actually, those are the skills that people need on the fly, just in time. So those things are changing, and they're being more accepted. But I don't think there's a solution today. I don't think we really know the full path. But I do think portfolios of one's skill base. We see it in LinkedIn today, or coming to LinkedIn. We see it coming to these other kinds of online. I'll bet Facebook has it in 5 years. Their Facebook become more like LinkedIn, and LinkedIn become more like Facebook. I'll stop there.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that I mean, I think we're kind of verging into something here too, whereby we have to kind of talk at a macro level, because I don't know whether I'm sure amongst us are people who direct programs and whatnot. And so when you start thinking at the macro level, since we're talking about assessment, what are the things that you look for in terms of a good online program? How do you evaluate a good online program?
I haven't evaluated programs, but I thought about this question because you sent me this one last night. And so what should be looking for in terms of a high quality program? Currency of the content has to be perhaps near the top of the list. Mm-hmm. Are the courses created once and then never refined, never updated, never modified, never rethought, never discarded? So one is how are they maintained? Two, in addition to currency of the content, are they just replicating a face-to-face program in an online version? That's wrong. I mean, if you're just shovelwaring stuff up and shoveling it up to the web, that was a mistake made by most places 20 years ago, and it continues to be a mistake made today by many places, and that's why you have dropout rates. And you're not thinking about what the web enables you to do that face-to-face does not, and vice versa. Each has benefits, each has opportunities. You can't just expect that replication is going to be a result in high student success. Number three, you can look at enrollment trends. I mean, word of mouth is a good indicator of how that program is going. Our program at Indiana our online EDD has grown. Word of mouth is basically, we don't do a lot of marketing of the program, but you look at enrollment trends. You might also look at number 4, and I list this. You might look at the pedagogical practices that are embedded in the courses, do content analyses of the courses to see what kinds of activities is it me to you activities, or is it interactive? Again, my pedagogical activities in the Smart Web paper talks about social cultural points of view, trying to get people to discuss, debate, elaborate, explain, clarify with their peers. So it's the engaging activities that are embedded in the program you might be looking at. Fifth, after the paper, you might look at the currency of the technologies. It comes later, but you do want to look at that. You don't want to have people using, I every semester I have something that I want to utilize that's gone by the wayside, it's no longer available. There's a tool for chatting online called Today's Meet that most of our professors in my department were using that no longer exists. Many people are using PB Wiki. That no longer exists. So currency of the content, currency of the resources that you're wrapping around, including the technological ones, would be things I'm looking at. You might also look at the players. Who are the people teaching in that program? What are their credentials? What are their backgrounds? That kind of thing. Are they just grabbing someone off the street that was driving taxi the day before and putting them in a pre-canned course that's standardized, that you see the Kaplans of the world do? They have limited resource skills, so they pre-designed the content for them and pre-prescribed everything. If you see something like that happening, it tends to be too rote and prescriptive and boring, to be honest.
Well, the organization has standards, right? They have standards for online evaluation. So I'm going to send folks to that website. Do you know it at the top of your head in terms of the standards for online evaluation of programs?
So that Quality Matters has some that they built in.
That's right, right. And
there was a guy at MIT that had, I thought, an intriguing notion of what to look for in a quality online class. His name is Nishikant Sunwalker. He's the younger brother of Luke. That was a joke, but his name is Nishikant Sunwalker. His name is Nish at MIT.edu. You can write to Nish, N-I-S-H, at MIT.edu. See if you get a response from him. I've tried recently. He's not one who's, sometimes he'll respond rather fast and sometimes he doesn't, but he has written, thought about what are the ways to analyze, and multimedia components is something that you mentioned earlier. Are you utilizing multimedia formats so that students can adapt their learning preferences, not styles, but their learning preferences to the contents that are out there? That was one of many things he had out there in his rubric that he had designed.
He's actually a very good source. He's a very he writes quite an interesting piece.
Oh, so you've read him before?
I have, yes.
Okay, okay, good.
Yes, language educators read tech papers too. Anyway, so we're getting up to a point whereby it's 1 o'clock, right? And I think I need to round this up. Curt, you've slept only for 45 minutes. You told me last night on the way to the conference. So I'm gonna look at it and now in terms of research, you know, and the trajectory of research, because I think one of the things that I've noticed that you've been writing about a lot is in terms of personalization of online teaching. You've been talking about phygital, you know, we're working with the age of longevity, which I think is really interesting. You know, we're working pedagogically in an era whereby it's knowledge producing in the classroom rather than knowledge learning, you know, binge learning, all these types of things. So in terms of looking forward, right, what are the areas of research? Because I know amongst us here, we're probably thinking, what are the areas that we can target next in terms of not only our own learning but and teaching, but also in terms of our research?
And so you want me to kind of indicate where one might extend their research today,
right?
What
because like
might explore.
You have a paper, 2020 meets education 3.0, and so. Right.
So I think one interesting thing really in a decade will be robot partners. I think our School of Education in Indiana will have robots in every room who will provide the logistical analyses for teams to work. And I think looking at how that frees up one's working memory to be more innovative, if you know the facts are there, and we already have it. You see Washington University in St. Louis has, I don't know if they're using Alexa or Google, I think it's Alexa, not Google Home, but you know, when you have Google Home that can respond to your factual kinds of questions at your whim, then those things, you know, I'm carrying 3 flash memory sticks in my pocket, right? I don't need all 3, they're just backups. So I have Batman, I have Superman, I have a normal, you know, little flash memory on the go kind of stick. You know, when Batman and Superman hold a terabyte of data in them and have all the contents from your field, then we start thinking about, well, what are the problem finding skills that students need? What are the, you know, decision-making skills? I mean, the higher order thinking skills. So I think an area that's ripe today is teaming, but with a artificial agent as one of the partners in the team to look at what the artificial agent, the AI. I mean, Georgia Tech now has AIs as TAs in their classes, and students cannot tell the difference between whether it's a human giving them feedback and an AI. I think that's fascinating, and I think looking at the scaffolding that these artificial agents can provide so that teams can function better or personalize the learning for others, I think that's a huge thing. Last week I saw a video of Mandarin online. So speaking about, you know, teaching languages online, this is a vision of something I have dreamed about for 30 years since I was an accountant, where panoramic, all around you are different screens and different scenarios. You might walk into a restaurant and interact with this intelligent agent ordering food at the restaurant. You might be walking into a hotel talking to a concierge like I just did. I did both. You know, might be going to an airport. But learning, they had this wrapper on. I can send you the link to it. 1 or 2 minute videos just blew my mind. Watching the panda bear was the intelligent agent talking back to the human and providing the feedback while he was practicing his Mandarin. So that's another thing. I think IQ walls, intelligent walls, similar to intelligent agents, but that, you know, the Professor Einstein's on our desk kinds of things. So that's one thing that's kind of got me intrigued. I think the other thing that's got me intrigued is to look at who our peers are, who the experts are that you're being mentored by. I think the expert mentoring today can come from people outside your program and will come from people outside your program, but your peers can also come from outside your program. There could be someone sign up at Purdue at the same time I sign up at Wisconsin, and we could end up becoming collaborative partners and peers because we can experience so many things synchronously and share so many experiences synchronously today that we couldn't have done as seamlessly 20 or 30 years ago. So I think kids in elementary schools are going to walk into schools and pick their partners from the Philippines and India for the day, and they'll be their partners that they do projects with. That's going to be also kind of fascinating, I think. Virtual worlds. I saw something recently where the teacher wears this headset and she can see the scores of students as they are answering questions. She can see the scores above their heads without having to go to their desk and look at what questions they got right or wrong. She just pans the room and can see the students who are having difficulties and go over and directly provide assistance to those that aren't getting those questions correct, and more pointed feedback on the fly through augmented reality or lenswear or virtual reality lenswear. And that's another very interesting thing that's coming. I think if I was, I think if I was in the field of counseling today, I think counselors are going to be golden in this age of online learning because, number one, there's so many opportunities in front of us. People are going to need some counselors to talk to about the opportunities and get some support. People who understand, who can be counselors or human development majors, but also understand the internet as a tool for learning. I think that might be a real fascinating area to look at, a real gold mine for possibilities of research. For me, I'm in the MOOCs and open education field, and so I continually push self-directed learning, self-regulated learning. We just submitted something on self-regulated learning in an online MOOC, looking at self-directed learning and what MOOC instructors think their students need and what they're providing to get students to be more self-directed. I think we need to ramp people up with self-directed learning skills. Mm-hmm. If only 25%, I'm just laying that out as a possibility, 25% of the population has self-directed learning skills, and we have billions more people getting access to the internet over the next few years, we need to have a larger percentage of people having self-directed learning skills and metacognitive skills. We need to be able to teach that or embed that or have that disposition to that students, that I'm going to create a flexible program that has more options and students are going to select based on their interests. We have to have a mindset of an Education 2020 mindset where the principle of openness, principle of flexibility, principle of convenience, principle of spontaneity, principle of non-traditional learning, principle of meaningful learning, principle of high expectations, these are all create learning environments that students then have that assembly of principles in that environment that shape their explorations, and they gain self-directed learning skills. They gain peer coaching and mentoring and collaboration skills as part of that. It's not just teacher to student. Teacher to student should still be 20% of the instruction, mm-hmm. or so, but student exploring should be 20%. And so mm-hmm. I think looking at, there's a lot of research can be done about exploring, about students self-directing their learning. I think that's a big hit area right now. Language learning is just exploding like crazy right now, and finding the mentors. I got a student just sent me her chapters of her she just sent me her dissertation. She got done. She wants me to read it. I'm here. But she's looking at people getting matched up to teach each other language online. This is a very important topic today in today's world. I mean, there's a lot of ramifications to looking at peer-to-peer mentoring and language learning online. Live Mocha no longer exists, but there are Babbles are out there, and there are many other tools out there that can that are offering these opportunities. We need to understand that today, that all TESOL people should be thinking seriously about online language possibilities.
I think that's already happening in whether it's extensive, it's pervasive. Anywhere you look, online language learning. I myself am learning, a language online. I mean, this is something that's happening. I think our interest, is on teaching. Getting teachers to kind of engage in thinking and sustaining our expertise in our profession. It's not just a matter of keeping up. It's a matter of being in it, being with students, being in there with them. So this is something that I think our intersection is very much interested in. I think we're trying to wind this up, and there was a comment about flipping classrooms. Online teaching is all about flipping classrooms, I think, wouldn't you say?
Thank you for that comment, because I was just going to say, I've mentioned AI, I've mentioned MOOCs. Learning analytics is one area, but then open education, open ed and OER, open textbooks, that's a huge area for research today that needs to be looked at, because right now awareness is very low in terms of open education and open textbooks. The awareness of faculty is extremely low around the world. It's picked up a little bit from 10% to 15%. I mean, in terms of awareness of the possibilities, there's not going to be use unless there's awareness. Awareness is the first phase. So I think open education in terms of awareness of all the possibilities that are out there. But then learning analytics is another area. AI I already mentioned. Those are some among the prongs of research areas.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So with that, Curt, I just want to wrap this up and thank you. And just so that you don't think that Indiana University is an online teaching, we are essentially here in Bloomington, but we have a very robust group of online students. Our doctoral program, has a larger enrollment online than it does face-to-face. And so it's the same for our master's program, which is a very interesting development. So in a sense here, I just want to thank you, Curt, for making the time. I know you're sleep deprived. And so thank you for the resources that you share. If you've not been with us, I think one of the things is that you should go to Curt's website. He has a lot of free stuff. And so, I'm really grateful for your participation, and I hope to be able to continue this line of discussion in the teacher education intersection group that I'm a part of. So thank you, Curt, and thank you everyone for being here with us. It's been quite a pleasure. See you, everyone.
Thank you, all the people. I see a lot of notes at the top, and send me email. I try to respond to emails, so thank you, Rachel and Joe and everyone there who's been in on this. So I guess.
Matt and Joe and Hind and so many folks, Mariam, Catherine, Chowran, we know Chowran. so give me your email again, so that
CJBonk@indiana.edu.
ABONK. How could I forget that, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to go see Barbara Bickelmar give a speech here. Okay. Barbara.
Barbara, yes. I hope to catch up. All right.
She's going to guest talk. So I'm going to head out. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.